Greetings and welcome to week 6, those of you in sports reporting. This is our final week of the summer. Hope you've had a good summer, that it's been enjoyable, that you've learned some new lessons, that you feel a little bit better prepared to be a sports reporter. We have a lot going on this week. This is a short week, again, because the class ends on Thursday, so you don't have through Sunday. So I've tried to kind of lay things out as we've gone along to give you a little heads up. Keep in mind that this Thursday, your highlight package is due. And if you have questions on that, you need to reach out to me. I will be out of pocket much of this week because it is the week of the 4th, so I'll be visiting family. Your sports talk show assignment is due, and your flip card assignment is due. Your flip card assignment goes along with what we're talking about this week, and that's covering the live event. Those of you who want to be sports reporters, one of the things that you might want to do is be a play-by-play announcer or a color commentator. And with that, you need to learn how to develop a flip card. A flip card is just what it sounds like. If you take a look at what I've created here, this is a flip card. So you see that this is for playing Pittsburgh State in football a couple of years ago. On one side you have Pittsburgh State's offense. You can see the running backs, the quarterback, wide receiver, all their offensive line. You flip it over and they're facing the University of Central Missouri defense. Open it up, and there you have the University of Central Missouri offense against the Pittsburgh State defense. You'll notice that I have some statistics on each of the players. I have their height, their weight, their year in school, their hometown, any honors they've won, their statistics up through the year, so that as I'm calling the game, I can just look down at this and I can see that their quarterback, or I'm sorry, I'm not going to try and say their quarterback's name, their running back, Jamal Tyler. He rushed 40 times for 228 yards, a 5.7 average. He has one touchdown on the season. Pittsburgh State comes into this game 8-1, 8-1 in the MIAA. So I have all that information at my fingertips. Their offensive line averages 6'4" and 286 pounds. So that's all right there. So in the middle of the game, I'm not trying to look through their roster. I'm not trying to look through their statistics. I've got that flip card right there. I also have some information I've written down on some legal pad, but it has statistics for the team. You can see it right there. Has statistics for the team, has their individual leaders as well and where they may rank in the league. Has some of that information typed in there. Information that I can use during the game, gives me a quick reference so that as I'm calling the game, I don't have to keep looking around for all kinds of information. I've got just a couple of pages with me that are right there. But that's part, again, of being a reporter. You have to do research. It's not all about the end product. It's about the process, and that's what I'm hoping that you're learning through this class. So remember, due Thursday by midnight, your highlight package, your sports talk show, and your flip card, okay? This week, the focus, again, is on broadcast sports reporting. Our sports focus is bowling and golf. And your discussion board assignment is going to be to do a live event critique. So you'll watch a live event and you'll critique it, all right? For the discussion this week, I'll be talking about reading media notes. This is an example of media notes. Information that sports information offices put together that have information about schedules, who's won, who's lost, how these teams have competed against one another, some of their key players, things like that. All kinds of details that are available to you. I have examples of these things on Blackboard for you under assignments, so go take a look. Trying to think if there's anything else I need to cover with you. Remember, Thursday, we are going to 610 Sports up in Kansas City. If you haven't let me know by now, I need to know if you are or are not going on that trip. All right? Okay. I don't have anything else for you, so let's get on with your notes about producing and reading media notes. Have a great week. One of my favorite things to produce when I was in sports information was media notes. These gave me a chance to really dig in and get to know my teams, get to know the other team a little bit, and help my media prepare as they got ready to cover games. But as a sports information director, I used to think of myself more as a sports reporter, just happened to be working for the university. Kind of think about how B.J. Kissel talked to us about how he was a reporter who happened to work for the Kansas City Chiefs. My job was to tell stories that my reporters, whether they be the broadcasters, whether it be the local newspaper beat reporter, somebody covering from a more regional or national media that would come in, help them tell their story. So would I provide some information, some notes about each of my players, notes about the team, notes about how we had done against our competition, some highlights, some things like that that would help them better inform our audience. And it gave me a chance to do a lot of writing and to be very creative. So they were a lot of fun. You may wonder as a sports fan, where do the announcers, where do the reporters come up with statistics like how a particular pitcher does in night games in the month of August after a team's loss? Well, those come from media notes. Those come from the sports information director or the PR office that's going through and they're looking at the statistics and finding that information that they can provide to the media. Why do we do that? Because our fans want more lively information. They want those little nuggets that provide good in-game reporting that help our reporters, help our announcers do a better job. And that's your job as a sports information director, if that's the field that you choose to get into, one that I would greatly enjoyed, one that I would recommend to anybody who's thinking they'd like to be a sports reporter, but instead of working for a media outlet, they'd rather just focus on one team. You are still a sports reporter. You're just that first line reporter that provides the information that gets used by the more mainstream media. So here's some information that you might think about including in your media notes. Obviously, you want schedules and results for the competing teams because we want to see who they've played. We want to see how they've done in those games. One of the things that we as sports fans love to do is compare scores and records against like opponents. Place where they are in the standings, whether that be in the conference or in the nation. Obviously, you want statistics for the team and for individual players. Maybe you have a player that's getting ready to break a record, so that's important. Coaching information where you include their record, where you include some background information on those coaches, because that's information we like to be able to pull up during an announcement. Of course, opponents' information, where they're located, what kind of offense or defense they run, what their record is, who some of their key players are, how they did in their previous game. We want to know the series history because these two teams have competed more than once. So how have they done against one another? Maybe one team is on a win streak against your team, or your team is on a win streak against them. We want to see how those games have panned out. Maybe your team has been on a 16-game win streak, but they've all been games won by a touchdown or less. That's really interesting information. We also want to see recaps of their previous games from the week before and how they did, as well as if they played one another earlier in the season, what happened in those games, because that's information we can draw back on. And finally, you need to think about starting lineups and depth charts. That's norms that we're going to see a lot of times because we want to be able to tell who's going to be competing in this game and then who's coming up after them, who's the next man up, so to speak. You also just start looking for nuggets. Maybe you have a couple of players on your team that their fathers were coaches. Or their mothers were coaches. That's really interesting information to have. Maybe you have a player that went on a missions trip, or different interesting nuggets like that the broadcasters can use during the call. People ask me quite often who my favorite broadcaster is, and I will tell you, one of my favorite broadcasters of all times was my old colleague, Sean Jones. He's now the athletic director at Henderson State, but he was the assistant athletic director here at UCM whenever I was the sports information director. I got to do color commentary with him for 6 years after I started teaching, and he dug in and found all kinds of nuggets. He was very thorough in his research. So things like weekly award winners, statistical trends, and things like that I would put together, he was able to take to the next level. Bits of trivia that spark feature stories for print journalists are very helpful. Player notes that are really thorough are very, very good. And then little simple trivia notes about players. Maybe include that one player has hit at least 2 3-pointers in 9 of the last 11 games. Maybe completely unrelated to a sport. Like I said, an elementary education major who taught English as a second language in Seoul, South Korea. But Sean was really good about finding those nuggets, finding out which players had fathers or mothers who were coaches, which players had alums of UCM, who had different trends and different streaks going on. He was really good about that and telling stories. The more information like that you can have, that you can provide to the media, the better their broadcast is going to be, the better your team is going to look. And finally, here are some good sources of information. You may be thinking to yourself, well, how do I find all this out? Well, obviously, if you go to the school or the team's websites, you're going to be able to find some information. If you look in local newspapers and see what they've reported, that might help you. You might be able to read past articles about certain teams. Talk, obviously, to the school sports information director or a high school activities director. Different websites. Max Preps covers high school sports. Not all schools are very good about updating their statistics, but many are. NCAA.org is where you can go to find out how teams are doing on the national level, what their stats are there. Conference websites like the MIAA, they post the team stats and the individual stats and the statistical leaders for all of the sports. National affiliations like the American Football Coaches Association, American Volleyball Coaches Association, Amateur Athletic Union, the United States Olympic Committee, they have lots of information, and if they've covered a feature or reported a feature on one of the athletes in your coverage area, that's a great place to go to find that information. You can mention that they were noted on those pages, but that again is going to help your broadcast make for a much more exciting, much more interesting live event broadcast, because especially when we're talking about television, we can watch the game. We can see what's happening. You don't have to give all the details. We want to see the stories within the stories. And that's what makes you a great sports reporter.